You guys, I have a special guest today. We're going to be talking about beekeeping. And I know that there are a ton of questions about keeping bees and the importance of bees. And that's a large part of our lesson this week is the importance of pollinators. So Reese is joining me today, who is a beekeeper. I am not a beekeeper, but Reese is. So he can answer all of the burning questions that you guys have about beekeeping. Welcome, Reese, and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you. I'm really excited to dive into my passion.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you to share your passion with all of the kids at Freedom Kitchen, because an important conversation that we're having right now is the source of our food. And the recipe that we made this week is an orange, honey, almond, pistachio cake. And the kids learned that in order to have oranges and honey and almonds and pistachios, we actually have to have bees. So bees playing a really important part of our food supply, yet our bee populations are declining. So you're doing your part in making your deposit into Mother Nature by keeping bees and helping to grow the bee population and bee colonies. What got you interested in doing that?
So ever since I was young, agriculture had its voice reach out to me, and it became my calling as I grew up. But essentially, agriculture in itself, what it can do for me and my family and my community, developed a passion within me to seek out more opportunities within that industry.
How old were you when you started keeping bees?
I actually didn't start keeping my own beehives until I was 21 years old, but I was involved with bees since I was 18 when I went through school lessons at the Career Tech Center. That's when I got first introduced, but it wasn't until 2021 that I first got my first ever colony of honeybees.
You were only 21 years old when you started keeping bees.
Yes.
That's pretty young. And I think that gives hope to our Freedom Kitchen students that this is something that they could do.
Yeah, especially because when anybody thinks of a beekeeper, they think of everybody's grandpa or grandmother or somebody that has a more seasoned age and maybe is even in retirement. But yeah, I was lucky enough to get into this area of agriculture at a young enough age to where I have a stronghold on my passion, and it's leading me on a very direct path, and it's great.
So how hard was it for you to learn beekeeping, and how did you learn?
Beekeeping is now one of the hardest things I feel in agriculture to do, especially with all of the negative consequences that they are faced with. My extent of knowledge that I needed to obtain before I was fully committed to be my own beekeeper in 2021 took a lot of time, took a lot of thought and consideration. I had a very good opportunity when I went through Career Tech Center in high school to develop that. Because of my passion, I dove very deep into the anatomy of bees and how they operate, how they're structured as a colony, as one unit. And then I just had to observe their behavior and change the way I thought based on their behavior so that I can make good decisions on how to best manage some of these colonies that I work with now. But it is ultimately a very difficult thing to do. But if your passion's there, it'll drive the way for a nice experience with the honeybees.
I met you at a food event at Michigan State University.
Yeah.
Are there courses available or maybe any books that you recommend?
I did not take any courses in beekeeping. My passion drove me to any opportunity that there was out there in the world, hands-on, firsthand experiences that I could do the observation, that personal growth, and develop that relationship with my honeybees. I would say, unfortunately, didn't take any classes. On the other hand, I was right there with the bees. And I would say that those experiences that I had were my courses. There are courses out there. I know MSU's Institute of Agricultural Technology offers a beekeeping/pollinator course through their 2-year certificate program, which I myself went through, which was a very good opportunity. And I know the Career Tech Center also has a general class that touches bases on the importance and an introduction to beekeeping. So, and that's right at your high school level at a Career Tech Center. I know some high schools have FFA chapters where those kids can develop their skills within those different areas, but there's a lot of avenues to develop your passion if that is your passion, but even just to broaden your knowledge on the very thing that sustains our environment and aids our nourishment for our bodies and everybody else that we know.
Did your passion come from a desire for health or for the environment? I mean, what was it that inspired you?
I am somebody that holds faith very close to my heart, and I believe that God has put me on this earth for very many reasons. One of those reasons has to do with agriculture. It's the reason I get up in the morning, the community that you can develop within this passion that has been basically called out for me. That is the number one driving force behind why I am involved with these great creatures. I feel like it's an internal calling that just has always been within me and will always be within me, and is what's going to keep me going.
Do you think that kids of your generation is aware of the environment and the environmental impact of our choices as you are?
I think that people are starting to become more aware, maybe than they used to. There is still a lot of misinformation and uncertainty around the topic of honeybees. Like the Bee movie, for instance, it's a show or a movie that kids younger or my age watch. And not to call them out or anything, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. And that's why it's so important to be putting yourself on the front lines with these honeybees and to really surround yourself with a community that knows what's going on. I do believe that there is a good number of people that are aware. It's just a matter of taking the steps now necessary with the information we have to do what's right for the honeybees.
I look around my neighborhood and I see the True Green truck pull up and spray chemicals on lawns.
Yeah.
And my concern is that many people don't understand the ramifications of the choices that we're making.
The professionals that we entrust out there to do those things, companies like that, they definitely are aware of parameters of what they're supposed to do. And I do believe that they're doing the very best they can for the customers that they have and to ensure that they're not harming more than they are doing good. I think that we all need to have a little bit of more of a reality check on the truth and the actual nature of some of our habits. And I do think we can do a better job of being more mindful and being better stewards.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a change and it starts with your generation. Unfortunately, I believe my generation is too old to make the changes necessary. So I've read that the number one killer of the honeybees is actually lawn, having grass, because there's no food for them.
Yep.
When we plant a lawn, but there's other alternatives like planting clover that we can still cut with a lawnmower so it doesn't get, like tall weeds.
Yeah, just enough to flower out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's one thing about some of the challenges with beekeeping in Michigan, specifically floral diversity, inclement weather, application practices, like you had speaked on previously. All of these driving factors, we have the ability to change through small behavioral habits that we become aware of, and we decide that we're going to take a different step, a better step towards being more conscious of our actions and the consequences or benefits even that they reap. And to talk on your generation's ability to change, I might kind of play devil's advocate in a way and say that it's your generation that has the path laid out for people like me and kids and other students, young adults to follow. But then with that comes, you have to have awareness, because you don't always want to follow the path that's laid out without being aware of the direction it's heading. So some of the mistakes that we've made or other more seasoned generations have made, we need to learn from them and cling close to your generation and generations like it before us, so that way we can make better educated decisions. And I'll give you an example. My mentor is 72 years old. I don't know what it is about him, but we have this connection as if we were from the same year and we were from the same passionate background. And when I feel that way with somebody that's several years older than I, it's a reassuring thing for not only him, but for me, that the path I'm on is the right one. So long as the steps I take are the best steps I can possibly make to my best knowledge. So by working together with that older generation and the younger generations, we can ensure that those decisions are better made together. So that way, when I lay a new path for the generation behind me, that they can do the same, and that eventually, hopefully, we can get to somewhere in this world where those changes we want to make are changes that we do make.
Well, you just gave me a lot of hope and actually brought tears to my eyes, because I can see where we have erred in our ways, planting lawns, spraying weed killer, planting non-fruit bearing trees because we didn't want bugs. We didn't want insects. So I've planted 5 trees since I've lived in this house, and they're all non-fruit bearing. And I remember my husband saying, well, we don't want ants and flies and bees. And so we literally didn't plant anything fruit bearing.
Yeah.
How silly of us to not have edible landscaping. I mean, God gave us fruit-bearing trees and bushes, and most people do not have fruit-bearing landscaping. We have what now I see as bare landscaping. It's bare of food. There's a lot of things that I think we're now discovering, but it's really difficult for someone in my generation or an older person to say, oh, well, I've always done it this way, but I'm going to go rip out my lawn. And so now I guess we get to share this learning with your generation, but very similar to the cooking classes I teach. It can be hard to go against the grain. I mean, when the whole world is going this way and you say, well, no, I want healthy food, clean food. I don't eat food dyes. Everyone thinks you're weird.
Or crazy.
Yeah.
Superstitious, even sometimes.
So if it's hard for a young adult to say, no, thank you, I don't eat food dyes. No, thank you, I don't eat MSG. No, thank you, I don't eat fast food because I know it's not real food. And you're looked at like you're crazy. How crazy will you be when you buy your first house and you rip out the grass and you're the only person in the neighborhood who has clover for lawn?
I'm actually in the process of getting an apartment and potentially buying the property that I'll be renting. So what you just said is more or less what's going to happen at some point in time, God willing. And if everything else works out, that's the kind of future I'm looking forward to. Not to cut you off, sorry, but that resonates with me completely.
So to that point, when I teach Freedom Kitchen, I teach courage, confidence, and creativity. And I say through the process of cooking, you're also going to learn critical thinking. But the courage, confidence, and creativity come first. Maya Angelou said the greatest value that you can have is courage, because without it, you can't live any of your other values. So if you value healthy food, you're going to have the courage to tell somebody, no, thank you, I don't eat fast food, or I don't eat food dyes. I don't eat processed food. That takes courage. And that is much less courage than moving into a neighborhood that has lawns up and down the street and saying, I'm going to be the first one to rip out my grass. And I'm going to ask all my neighbors to stop spraying True Green because I want to keep a beehive in the backyard. And my neighbors don't know the impact, just like your friends don't know the impact of their food choices. Most people don't know the impact of the yard chemicals, lawn chemicals that they're using. And so this takes a lot of courage to be able to speak your truth.
And I couldn't agree more with you, more specifically in my life right now. I've had to stand up for myself and show that courage in order to steadfast and stand behind my values. So you said that what we were talking about earlier could have brought tears to your eyes. That it could bring tears to my eyes because it's never been more true. That's the kind of foundation that you're laying out for these kids. And it's going to help feed their passion. My first original passion, what I thought was my passion, was conservation for wildlife and nature. my family shot it down. They said, you're never going to make any money. It's not worth it. Don't do that. It's so stupid. What are you thinking? You're nuts. You're out of your mind. So you know what I did? I took in what they had to say. I kept my values and my heart close to me, and it got me to agriculture. And when I told them that, they lost their lid. They thought, no, go back to conservation. You're crazy. Or you're going to have to work so hard in your life and you'll never make enough money to support yourself. And it's just, it's admirable, but you're even crazier than before. So, and now, and there's times that they still agree with that, what they have said. But I think that they are brought a certain amount of joy seeing how happy I am within where I am. And that's what means the most. And that's what's important.
So you do the beekeeping as a side hustle, which we can still have a 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we live in a world where, we have rent to pay and car payments.
Yep.
But you're able to keep bees and as your side hustle. And it not only feeds your soul and it gives you a creative outlet and it gives you an opportunity to contribute, but it can also be an income producing opportunity.
Absolutely. When done in a sustainable way, through and through. That's a challenge. Beekeeping in a sustainable way, when faced with so many elements of damage, it can really put a kink in your chain when it comes to sustainability. While developing your passion and your awareness and connection or relationship with the honeybee, you begin to understand that they're making changes with all of the things that they're dealing with as well. Part of being a good beekeeper is observing that and changing within yourself so that the changes that you have to make and the bees have to make align with the trajectory that we are all hoping for, that it'll all get better and that we can start making better decisions to benefit these creatures.
I can imagine that there's a startup cost and probably a learning curve. So I would never tell someone they're going to make money immediately. As with everything else, there's going to be a learning curve. But in addition to knowing that there is the possibility to make money from this, I have to believe that in the meantime, there is a reward knowing that you're making a deposit into nature and into Mother Earth, and that everybody really benefits by having increased bee colonies, because as we discovered cooking this week in Freedom Kitchen, we have to have bees to have food. Yeah. And so if you were to inspire other kids of your generation, what would you tell them about their contribution to the future?
The way to drive this passion that you have, to withdraw some kind of reward from doing all that you do with honeybees. With our lives being so busy, and some of us, like myself, needing to work a 9 to 5, there are instances in life that are going to allow you to connect your passion with your community, your friends, and even the way you make money. By just trusting that your passion is what you need to be pursuing, your other skills that you have as an individual in the society that we live in, with our 9 to 5 jobs, there's connections everywhere. So this jar of honey costs $20. But there's ways to add value to this jar of honey. And that's what ultimately is going to help fund you, and kind of help offset those startup costs, and what are going to make you thrive with all of the connections that you have out there in the world. Because there's so many different things within beekeeping that you can pursue to sustain your financial needs as an individual. Apitherapy, which is the use of honeybees and the products they produce to better your physical and mental health, down to the spoonful of honey you eat every morning, or in a soup or a tea, not a soup, excuse me, a coffee like I do. So from here to there, and there's even more side branch opportunities within that scheme of opportunity to just make yourself thrive within the very thing that you're passionate about. So
yeah, now I know there's some startup costs. So I made a list of things and I think you have some tools there, because you would have to actually buy the beehives, right? Okay.
So Right now, I've just got a few things. This is a fraction of all that goes into it. But for the most part, we have our essentials, starting with our hive tool. This allows us access into the hive and it's a tool that helps us manage the colony by getting in between frames. And frames, this is the component that means the most to the bees. This is where they're living. So this helps get into the hives and to access all of the living quarters that you need to be aware of within a given colony. So that's our first tool. Our second tool, and my least favorite tool, is a brush, because the bees don't necessarily like it when you brush them. You know, they're kind of like, hey, what are you doing, man? I'm kind of working here. But it does help when extracting honey. Well, that's what this is. This is a honey super. So when you're extracting honey, sometimes you're required to brush the bees up so you don't get them in the honey during the extraction process. Our next important tool in keeping us safe as beekeepers is our smoker. So each smoker, and I only got one hand here, so I'll try to do my best, has a little chamber for adding fuel. You light your fuel, and then you want to do what you get a good cold smoke going. If you've never heard the term a cold smoke, it's a smoke that kind of lingers in the air, and it's not its driving force isn't heat, whereas normal smoke that we're aware of or used to, just rises to the top. We want to try to get a smoke that kind of settles into the hive so that the bees, what that does is it triggers an instinctive response, which is there's a fire. So we need to make preparations and get busy. We need to start eating honey just in case we need to evacuate our home. It's important to understand that smoke doesn't harm the bees, nor does it take them away from the responsibilities they have. It just kind of distracts them. A busy bee is a happy bee. That's what I always say. The best time to be in your hives is in the middle of the day when all the foragers are out. When there's more bees in the hive, there's more eyes on you. And that's not good because, they're territorial. This is their livelihood that we're talking about here. The next very important thing, and the thing I often forget about, is gloves. So when we're in these hives, we typically are, handling them with our hands, not just our hive tools. And there are some tools that can allow you to take a frame out without touching the frame at all. That essentially is going to keep you from getting stung in the hands. And trust me, it is so worth it to keep your hands covered. I've been stung plenty of times. The next thing, and I would say is also one of the most important things, is the bee suit. So the bee suit is what gives you a protective layer, and the veil specifically keeps the bees away from your head. So this isn't a sting-proof suit. There are some that are more sting-proof than others, but it's simply a garment. It's also, it's white, because white's a very neutral, calm color. The honeybees aren't faced with a lot of predatorial responses with that color, whereas black, bright colors because of the floral attraction, but black and brown specifically because of the fact that bears are what are going into the hives, tearing everything apart and stealing all the work that the bees put in to produce the honey that we have. But ultimately, that's why brown and black are not good colors to be going out into your hives with. So, but this is my bag. So you got to have something to carry all of these tools, because if you're anything like me, I leave things everywhere. So there's times and if I don't have this, I'm kind of lost. And it's kind of a mess in there right now. So I'll just kind of pull out some of the tools I have. But this is a queen painting chamber or cage. A queen clip. So a queen clip is what protects the queen when you need to handle her, rather than just pinching her wings or thorax. Sorry, we never pinch or we never grab her by the wings. We always grab by the thorax. I need to make that clear because it's very important never to damage her wings. So she goes in there, she closes up. Her worker bees can go in and out sometimes, depending on which kind of clip you have. But they're able to feed her through the little slits that are in here. So,
how often do you have to go out and visit your hives? Like, What is the time commitment to maintain
Mhm.
a hive?
Well, my mentor says if you don't take care of your bees before you eat your supper, you're a horrible beekeeper. So it varies from beekeeper to beekeeper. Now, there is a standard limitation on how often you should be in your hives. Typically, no more than 4 or 5 times within a 2 week span. Just because, and I don't know if I'll be able to show you very well. There we go. So this is propolis and a little bit of honey and wax, what have you. What this is a sticky substance that the bee produces, and maybe I can even get some of this off to play with it. So it's a sticky substance that the bees use to seal off their hive. So when you're cracking open the hive, you break that seal. So what's important about knowing the service that propolis does is that it keeps everything out that the bees don't want in. If you break that seal too many times, you're allowing for the potential for pathogens and even potential predators to enter the hive, like hive beetle, parara moth, even mites. Now, mites you can't get rid of because of all of the bad practices that we have practiced, essentially. So just the resistance in mites has become strong, making it harder for the bees. It is a time commitment to the fullest, in the sense that you have to care for these bees as much as you care for a pet. And that aligns with animal husbandry, even though we don't consider honeybees as livestock or animals. With the way that we use them, they are. It is a creature that serves a purpose for our benefit. Therefore, we need to commit a lot of our time and energy, just as any other pet or livestock animal that you might have. But it is doable, and you can balance your busy lifestyle and beekeeping, as long as you're passionate and you understand that respect and relationship needed to do so.
Okay, good. So we clarified that there is a time commitment. So we can't just stick a beehive in our backyard and forget about it.
Not anymore. 1900s, maybe even before that, my mentor was telling me. So this is, again, knowledge that I would not otherwise know. They had a beehive. They put it out there. They let it do their thing for an entire season. Maybe go in there once or twice during the 3 months of the summer, and they'd harvest their honey and they'd be done. They wouldn't even treat, because there wasn't a need for it back then, until some of the consequences that we've made, or even just some of the environmental conditions changing. Then we became required to do some more stuff. So that's why I say it's harder now than it ever was.
Which really speaks to the importance. I mean, it's more important now than it ever was because of the decline in our environment and the quality of our food. And that's why I'm encouraging all of our Freedom Kitchen students to think about what is their contribution, because I think everyone has to take some amount of responsibility, personal responsibility. I've been teaching the concept lately of chop wood, carry water. It's a Zen proverb that says everyone needs to take personal responsibility. So instead of getting caught up in all the millions of things that society tells us, well, I have to go do all these things. Many of those things are not as important as chopping wood and carrying water. Just like I teach in my cooking classes, creativity over convenience. Every time we choose a convenience food, or we choose a task, anything out of convenience, someone else has done it for us. We have no opportunity to be creative and do things different or leave our mark on anything, but we're giving our power away. Every time we choose convenience over creativity, we are giving our power away. And what you're doing is you're taking your power back, and you're chopping wood and you're carrying water, and you're making a deposit into nature and into Mother Earth and into your future food supply. Everyone has to realize your food is at stake. If we have no bees, we have no food.
I'll even confess a little bit, as far as what you just said. I am guilty of allowing the conveniences in my life to disrupt what matters most and what I need to do. I've developed this saying that complacency is the number one killer of change and growth. Looking back on it a little bit further, my coach was the one to originally say this when we were playing soccer. You tell me, Reese, if you're going to just be complacent with the way you are playing this sport, you just expect to sit on the bench all season. Because if you don't want to do what it takes and to force yourself to change, even though it's uncomfortable, you're just this is the result you're going to expect. So wake up, do better, think about what you need to change, and you can expect to be out in the field. And I did. I know I didn't get as far as maybe he wanted me to do, but I got most improved player at the end of the season. And it was because he instilled that thing in me. And I continue to carry that with me till this day, until the day I forget to remember, which I hope to God it never happens, because that is one thing society does best, is it distracts us by keeping us complacent with those distractions to inhibit our growth and to inhibit the change we need to make within ourselves.
Well, I think you're going to inspire a lot of students and young adults. And what I think will be beneficial is for you to become a mentor. Just as you have a mentor, it's time for you to step into that mentorship and leadership role, especially for your generation and the kids coming up behind you. So if you're open to it, I would love to do more videos with you, because I think we just scratched the surface today.
Oh, yeah.
Of what you could share and how you could inspire. And so I think that the next question people would have is, well, what does it look like to set up a hive? Can you show us? And then probably the next question after that, maybe the first question, is how much money can I make? So maybe we need to do a video on different income streams, different income opportunities, because I think there's probably more than just honey. I think you can make a lot of different products out of the honey and the propolis and
even the wax.
And the wax.
I have candles in my truck that came from my hives.
There's so much you can teach the kids. So if you're open to it, then what I'll commit to all of our students right now is that this is the first in what is probably going to be a series of videos for you guys to learn. And maybe Reese will actually become your mentor in the future as he begins teaching more and more kids how to become beekeepers. Reese, do you have any parting words today for the students?
I would just say that I'm here to inspire, to teach, to lead, and I am more than willing to walk this journey with you guys as students and with you, the instructor, to develop these burning questions and to answer them, so that way we can keep making positive changes, small changes, which is important, because we don't need to tackle on the whole world all at once. So that way, once the change and the result of change is right there in sight, I really look forward to working with you guys in the future. I'm really excited to show you what it takes to get a beehive set up, because I can more than happily do that.
Well, that is super exciting. This was super informative. I'm going to go ahead and process this video. I'll get this rendered and share this out to our students. You and I will continue to work on the next video in the series, because you've piqued my interest. I know you're going to inspire many, many students. And I'm just so thrilled to have met you, because you give me hope, Reese. When I see a 20-year-old who's interested in the environment and doing their part. We don't need to tackle the world, right? None of us are responsible for all of it. It might be teaching cooking classes. It might be teaching beekeeping. It might be teaching animal husbandry. We all have a part. I am so inspired by you. I have been since the day I met you, and I look forward to seeing everything that you can do to help the next generation.
Trust me, it brings a lot of joy to hear that from you, because, like I said, it reassures that the journey I'm on is the journey I'm going to stay to, because it's the right journey. So meeting you has been a very great blessing. I really appreciate you stepping up and taking responsibility for my future, if I dare say so, because the things that we're doing today and what we will continue to do.
Yes, you're amazing.
Cool.
All right. Until next.
You are too. So I'm excited
Thank you.
to keep going with this.
I love you, kids. Just love you.